Amazing. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, you know the way we say it on the show. We're back again into that space. Yes, the word cafe, where we come in to lean on one another. Yes, and learn from our experiences to forge a new path. Yes, amazing. How are you doing? Well, I'm cool. I'm beautiful over here. The Federal Capital Territory has been pretty hot back in Nigeria, but we are in that season called the raining season where you have the rains and all that, but slightly humid here. Yes, in the Federal Capital Territory. Beautiful. But, that will not stop us from coming into this space to share with one another. What are we doing today? Yes, you can see it on the screen already. Remote working in Nigeria. A lot has been happening in that space. Yes, across the globe, things are changing. The pattern, the style, the way we go about working, the way we go about embracing work. They call it VUCA. Yes. So I have somebody very important, wonderful. I've been going after this individual for a while now to get her on the show for us. Yes, is a she. You heard me, for us to talk and all that. And today she just said, yes, Max, let's do this. Who is this person? Well, I'll give you a little background, then I'll bring her in. Her name is Tari. Tari is her name. When she comes on, I'll let her do all the other bit of herself. She's a HRO professional, seasoned, I must say. Enough of my gist. I know you want to hear her voice. You want to see her. Where is she? Where is she? There she
Hi.
is. Hi, Tari. How are you?
Yeah, hi, Amakri. How are you doing? I'm fine, thank you.
I'm
Thank you for having
beautiful. I'm
me
beautiful. Pleasure. Thank you for coming into this space and to share with us. Yes, the way I normally do it, I tell my guests, nobody knows you like you. So, in as much as I call your name and all that, I allow you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. So, who is Tari? Let's get to know her.
here. My name is Tari Akibi, and currently, I work as the head of HR, General Manager, HR and Corporate Services for Walter Smith. But about my background, career-wise, I am a
Mm,
lawyer, a lawyer by training. I
okay.
practiced law for about 2 years, and I found it very difficult, honestly. As much as I thoroughly was inspired by being a
Hmm.
lawyer and worked hard to become one, by the time I actually started, the Nigerian system showed me a different side of being a lawyer. So I, I ended up in Shell. So I started
Okay.
out in Shell actually. And now it's actually over 20 years now. So my HR
Whoa,
experience, yes. So I worked
beautiful.
in Shell for about 18 years. And then I moved over to Walter Smith Petroman Oil Limited as the head of HR, where I have been now for the past three years or thereabouts. Yes. So that's really about
Beautiful.
me. I have always been a people's person, an advocate type person. So that's why I even chose law in the first place. I
Okay.
most interested in things around justice and doing what's right and doing things
Yeah.
properly. So it was not unusual that even when I left the legal profession, I would end up in HR. And
Hmm.
it's really a really beautiful journey so far. It's been worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. You've been in oil and gas. From what you're saying now, you did law. I mean, you practiced law for like 2 years, but
Mm.
you found yourself in this oil and gas space for like over 18 years plus. So what's the oil and gas like for you? Considering it is our main economic stay here in Nigeria. What has it been like for you?
Okay, the oil and gas industry is a very interesting one, particularly in Nigeria, because and I'm going to talk specifically on two levels, right? On the first
Okay.
level of just as an industry, and the
Mm-hmm.
other level of the level of professionalism in the industry. Now, the oil and gas industry, as we know, is one of, if not the only, really mainstay of economic value, as it were,
Yeah.
in this our country, Nigeria.
Yeah.
So Nigeria has found oil well over 100 years ago. It has been our mainstay. At one time, I think we're like one of the third or top, at least top five producing countries in the world, and
Yeah.
all of that. So the interesting thing about the oil and gas industry is it's as it is called now, the energy industry. And you know
Yeah.
how energy is. Energy affects everything. Energy
True.
makes things move. Energy is the core of any economy. I mean, right now we keep complaining about if only we had power, if only we had certain infrastructure in place, the economy would move much faster.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, I think I can credibly say that the oil and gas industry is a core mainstay industry in Nigeria today. And as far as I'm concerned, I may be biased, but it's one of actually the best sectors to be. In any economy, you actually want to be working in the sector that drives the economy, that drives the country, because then
Yeah.
what happens? They're in forefront of making changes, you're in
Yeah.
forefront of what's going on, and you're smack in the middle of exactly how the country operates. So if we
Okay.
know a bit about Nigeria, we know that it's every time we hear a budget, we want to know what's allocated to the oil and gas industry, how much
Yeah.
is oil price, everything actually is tied to that. So that's on on that part as an industry. Now,
Yeah.
coming to the part as a career professional, again, once you are a part of the engine of the economic system of a country, what you
Yeah.
find also is that as a career professional, you're also working as it were in the forefront of how things should be. As far
Indeed.
as I know, the oil and gas industry sets a standard for
True.
practice in various areas, legal practice, for the HR practice, for financial practices in the country. And I recall, even as all the time I worked in Shell, we would have, as it were, criteria or requirements that are higher than actually what the law required. So
Mm-hmm.
I found it honestly quite exciting. It's always nice to be in that, you know what I mean, in that particular industry that is
Yeah.
it's creating the change, creating the movement, and creating the making the economy move forward. Actually,
Beautiful. Now, you just touched on something, change and HR. And as a HR practitioner, I know you deal with change
we
practically on a daily basis. So tell us a little about the change your organization, you're experiencing in this, as in here and now. As in, tell us a little about that.
Okay, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, HR and change are like two peas in a pod, simply because change largely is brought about human experience. And what does
Hmm.
the HR professional do? Just manage the human experience. Really, that's when it comes down to the bottom line. That's really what it is. Before I talk about like the last few years, what I'm currently, let me just kind of just give some sort of what
Go
I
ahead,
consider key milestone, interesting parts in the oil and gas industry over
please
this
do.
last 20 years I have worked there.
All right.
So when I entered the workforce in 2000 and 2000 actually, when I entered the
Yeah.
workforce in 2000, we were just beginning to, what's that word? 2000, we're just beginning to get into the computer age. It was
Yeah.
just, we're just on the cusp of it. I remember coming to do my test, and my test was a computer based test to get
Yeah.
into Shell at the time. And I recall being in that room, and there were some people that by just seeing a computer
They
already were
froze.
destabilized. so so you can imagine it was quite an interesting time. Interestingly, my dad who is an academician, had kind of seen ahead, and before we left school, he had put us through some computer training. So I already had the basics, and I think I that really helped because I could clearly see across the room some people were already uncomfortable with
Yeah.
just seeing a computer. But then where do we start?
Computer.
What do we do? And I say that just to buttress the point that I entered the workforce at a time of a very critical, change as well.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years, say 5 years down the line, then we begin to have this thing in the oil and gas industry around diversity. That conversation begins to come up. What are we talking
Yeah.
about diversity? There was all the talk around, first of all, in Nigeria. Does the Shell workforce, does it reflect that diversity of the country? And that conversation started. It morphed and morphed and morphed into the women movement,
Mm-hmm.
and all sorts of things came from that. That was another very interesting time of change. It changed the way we work, it changed the way we thought about things, changed a whole, lot of things and as well. Finally, I would say in the last, let's say in the last quarter of, when I left my Shell career, we were now in the era of real volatility. Because
Mm.
I remember then we had the real dips on the oil price. The oil price was
Yeah.
now no longer something that we could rely on a very long term basis. We now needed to be thinking a bit more short term, 3 year, 5 year, that kind of
Yeah.
thinking. And that indeed changed the way we had to think about, manpower management. How do you manage manpower through the ebb and flow and the increase and decreases of, the oil price? So that's
Yeah.
one of the changes that came through. Finally, in the last couple of years, I would say the greatest change I think of my career and experience is COVID. COVID has become a defining moment, not only on a local level in terms of how we manage people, but all
Exactly.
over the world. All over the world. So those are for me the clear sort of, on a rough basis, changes I have seen over the course of my career so far.
Now, listening to you, one can break these changes into three segments, like you rightly said. The advent of the what I wouldn't say, okay, I use that word, the computer age. We're
Yes.
all in this part of the world embracing the computing system, moving away from typewriter,
Yeah.
shorthand writing, and all that. Then we
Yeah.
saw the fluctuation of the oil price. That
Yeah.
was another segment. Then
Yeah.
we're now seeing what I call it, the sledgehammer change. That is the
Yeah.
COVID, as it were. Now, the change on this level is like a quantum leap kind of change.
Oh
It just
yes.
took it way up there. Now,
Yes.
tell me from your experience moving from the first change, getting to know the computer, the second change, oil price, then this COVID. For the COVID, how have you been managing your workforce? Because it's like 2020, everybody just went into somewhere hiding, but somehow businesses need to, we just need to work. So how did you go about it? How did you get your people, to work,
Yes. Nice.
and get, yes, and get the company going? How did you do that?
Oh, okay. So I mean, I introduced myself at the beginning. I'm the head of HR for Walter Smith Petroleum Oil Company, and Walter Smith has a couple of other companies as well, which I manage generally as a group.
Okay.
It has been honestly the most defining and interesting time of my career.
Mm,
This last 3 or so years have
yeah.
had you know how in your career some things you do them over 8 years, but in this last 3 years the kind of things I've had to do has just been, as far as I'm concerned, just phenomenal and interesting. I'll tell you why. Okay, so I got into Walter Smith and we're undergoing some sort of organizational reorganization, and it was a really big
Okay.
reorganization. It
All right.
was a whole lot, right from the structure to bringing in a top level leadership to reorganizing the way we work to even moving physical offices all
Mm-hmm.
in Lagos, all now into one location.
Yeah.
Now, I started in Walter Smith in mid 2019, and all that, we handled all that, and all that was going on, right?
Right.
In 2020, as the year broke, as it were, uh, before before I had come into the company, there had been the plan of setting up a refinery as a
Okay.
different business. So
Mm-hmm.
as the year broke in 2020, we're ready to go and deliver the refinery and
Mm-hmm.
make it happen, and a lot of work was going on.
Yeah.
Now the year started. We started doing recruitments. We started doing all sort of manpower activities. We had
Activities.
to second people from Walter Smith Petroman to the refinery. All that work was going on, and we're really gearing to go. All of a sudden, COVID happens. I recall the day we actually just, got the news flash. It's in Nigeria. We need to do something different. In fact, I was on my way to work. I spoke to my CEO then, my CEO, my current CEO, still my CEO, Chicken Wonsu. I was like, we need
Yeah.
to call a meeting. And as I got into the office, we called the meeting. I recall very clearly the meeting was for 10 o'clock. Between 8 and 10, we had to pull a slide pack together. What
Mm.
are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? Now, at that time, at that time, the okay, so facility management is under my portfolio, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
the most important thing we needed to be sure that needed to happen was that our facility was protected, because
Mm-hmm.
and of course protected, and the staff within the facility, particularly
Are protected.
yes, were also protected, because you know how it was then. Once one person tested positive, everywhere was shut down, and the government came
Exactly.
in. CDC was on your case. So we needed to be sure that that was not going to happen. So within 2 hours of that morning, or 1.5 hours, because I think the meeting started at 10, I worked with my colleague, and we, just belted out some sort of information on a
Mm-hmm.
slide pack. And we had our first meeting. And I just remember it so clearly. It was really, really interesting. So we explained what we knew. We know a certain one person has been tested positive, and on and on.
Mm.
After after a month, this was February. In
Yeah.
March, it became clear that everybody was going on lockdown, right? So we began to
Right.
think, what are we going to do? There were a few things that were clear, which is what I think any leader needs to do in that situation. You need to be clear about what you will still continue to do. And one thing we're
Okay.
clear about was as means that the refinery was going to get launched, and we're going to do it somehow, right? So
Right.
we all moved home. Of course, we did the usual thing everybody did. You supply internet access, you increase your bandwidth, you give people phones and, infrastructure to work at home. But what became most interesting, which for the first time in my career I had to do, was I recruited, I think this was, cumulatively maybe about 40 people all
Oh,
on. I had people resuming online. I had people
online.
recruiting online. If you recruit 40 people, you know how many interviews you needed to do to recruit 40 people, right? Because
Exactly.
we're literally manning the refinery from scratch, pretty much. We just had a handful of people that have moved from petroman into the refinery to, start up the work, but every other person we're literally recruiting.
Whoa.
We did phone interviews, Zoom interviews, all sorts
Wow.
of interviews, and we went through that whole process, and we finally launched the refinery in October. And
Okay.
I honestly, I found that one of the most exciting things in America. I had people resuming I hadn't seen. I had
Mm-hmm.
people, I hadn't seen physically. We started
Physically,
doing
yeah.
onboarding online. We did all
Online.
their events online. We needed to sort out how people get into the field, how do they get tested, and all of that. So,
Yeah.
and while doing that, we needed to maintain, um, some sort of cohesiveness as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't want people feeling isolated, so you need to ensure that
Yeah.
the culture is still in place, people still feel welcome. So you're making so many phone calls, and that was so exciting, really exciting, honestly. The other part, that first year, 2020, was for the first time ever we
Mm-hmm.
had a Christmas party online.
Online.
Lord, how are we going to do this? Because usually, you know how the end of your party is like, where everybody comes
Everybody
together,
come together. Yes.
whole bonding thing. And I was like, how are we going to do this? But we did it. It felt strange when we started. But along the line, we had fun. We
Mm-hmm.
delivered food to everybody's house, so everybody was on at the same. And it was just, really
Beautiful.
quite an interesting time. It was really, really quite an interesting time.
Now, listening to you, it's like you can write a whole book on
I,
this
I, I
this
really can.
topic. A whole book, like your experience and all that. Now, the remote working from your point of view, because everything you stated here now is like from 2019, automatically you just went into that remote working mode, and somehow you grappled, you dealt with one or two things, but it's like you've come around it now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the way you're expressing yourself is like you guys are enjoying remote working now, as in tell I mean let's hear this. Do you think Nigeria as a country and our organizations and all that were ready for this from your
You- you-
experience?
it's a funny question, and this is how I like to look at it. It's not about being ready; it just has to happen.
It just has to
So,
happen.
in a VUCA world, you need to look at what needs to happen, not whether you're ready for it. So you
Please,
first look at.
can we define the VUCA? Because some people were like, "What is Tari talking about? What is VUCA? Is there a new slang in in Nigeria or something?"
You go ahead and define
The
it.
volatile,
Yeah,
uncertainty,
yes,
complex, and
yes,
ambiguous situation.
perfect. That's it. So in a VUCA world, I think you just need to be clear about what's changing, not whether
Right.
you are ready for the change. Because the
Whoa.
interesting thing about that change is going to come. Whether you are ready, whether you're
Or
not
not.
ready, the change is going to sweep you. So
Okay.
what you need to be very certain about is change is here. How are we going to
Mm.
walk back from the change and get ourselves, you know what I mean, ready to
Yeah.
go? Now,
Ready to go.
when we talk about readiness, let's say we had all the what they call it, that the luxury of time to prepare
Yeah.
and all of that. I would have said that the Nigerians were not ready. Or also, Nigerians did not know that they were mentally ready for that, even though they may not have been physically ready for that. And what do I mean by that? So, I mean, when we talk about being physically ready, certain infrastructure was not in place in a lot of companies,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
like we'd have expected them to be. You could see companies scrambling now to put things in place. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Certain companies where they didn't even have Zoom. They didn't have Zoom. They didn't have meetings. You know what I
Meeting.
mean? They just didn't have any of those. Everything was heavily dependent on presence.
Yeah.
Luckily, just before, not even just before, I had come from Shell, and
Yeah.
Shell had for a couple of years actually, we had come around the concept of presence does not equal work. So it
Please,
was already some
can you take that again?
presence does not equal work.
That's a mathematical equation. Serious one. Presence
So,
doesn't equal work. I like that.
so the fact that someone is physically in the office doesn't necessarily amount to the fact that the person is doing work that the person is required to are going to deliver.
True. True.
So coming into Walter Smith, I already had that at the back of my mind. So
Mm.
I already was pretty clear about the fact that we needed to go this way, and we just need to get ourselves ready. So let me not stray from the issue of whether we were ready as Nigerians.
Yeah.
So, in terms of being physically ready, I don't think Nigerians were ready. I don't think Nigerian companies were ready. A lot of them do. A lot of the IOCs and in the oil and gas industry, because of the international IOC influence, there had
Hmm.
already been something around flexi working, working
Yeah.
from home, having it. So, a couple of us were already used to that. But in the larger society, I mean, we could see in the way, in the way a lot of the other parts of industry were struggling.
Yeah.
Even the
The
banks,
smaller businesses now.
yeah, struggled, and smaller businesses struggled, and all of that. So I would say that Nigerians were not physically ready. However, Nigerians did not know that they were mentally ready for the change. Because if we look around us, we have been begging for that change. I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to look at how the delivery business has just blown up. The physical traffic situation, it takes 2 to 3 hours a day, 4 hours, 5 hours for some people. We talk
Yeah.
about the security situation. We
Hmm.
have such huge security situations, particularly in Lagos. You can be
Hmm.
sitting in traffic, there's an attack on some cars, boys
Yeah.
descent, and all sorts of things were going on. But somehow, maybe we just felt we needed to continue working that way,
Mm.
getting at 4:30. I'm talking about Lagos now because I live in
Yeah.
Lagos, and Lagos is like really
It's
high up
similar
there.
In Port Harcourt and somehow in Abuja too. The situation you're painting now. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we just thought, it's just that hustle mentality of the average Nigerian.
Mm.
This is the way
Mm.
life is. Let's push it. Let's push it. And COVID happened, and we suddenly realized, you know what, life can be better. We can work
Exactly.
from home.
Yeah.
So, in terms of Nigeria as a whole, I would
Hmm.
say that. there was not a lot of infrastructure, a lot of people were not ready. But in
Yeah.
our psyche, I think we're ready for that break, but we
Okay.
just did not know. So COVID just helped us to,
More or
transit
less. COVID
into
was
that.
the catalyst, more or less creating that
Honestly, it was
jump. It's
really
like
happening.
you don't want to
Yeah.
jump, so I'm gonna set you on fire somehow. So you just need to jump, and we're all jumping. As like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're free. When you talked about the delivery business in Nigeria, for example, the last 2 years we just saw this astronomical increase.
Oh,
I mean, the
yeah.
business just everywhere. Food business, we can actually now deliver to you. Don't worry, in the comfort of your home and all that. And this
Honestly.
has brought about a huge change. Now,
Oh,
concerning the remote working, do you think, as a country, or should I say the IOCs where you play big, and the other organizations, do you think we need to approach it from a policy point of view that, see, we are here now, we're seeing the benefits of remote working, but we need to
mhm.
come up with, would I say, a legal framework, policy wise, in really enshrining it in our way of work? Do you think we need that?
Yes. I say that we need that simply because human beings, for some reason, operate better when, when there's some structure around the guidance of their behavior.
Yeah,
That's how laws came to be, and that's how policies and guide policies by extension organizations come to be. It's
yeah.
not enough to just leave a lacuna and just say, well, we're working offline, we're working from home, let everybody just operate the way. No, you would need a structure around it because human beings being human beings,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
can, they can take things to a level that you probably did not even even envisage.
Imagine.
So yes,
Exactly.
there needs to be I mean, all over the world there are laws around it, there are laws around how you work, virtually, and
Mm-hmm.
what virtual working really means
Mm-hmm.
from just from a country perspective right
Yeah.
down. So one very simple thing, for example, you're working virtually, where do you pay your tax? So if you were to work physically, because working virtually now means that you can live somewhere else and
Mm-hmm.
work somewhere else
Mm.
because you don't need to be physically where you work. Now,
Yeah.
normally your tax is tied to where you physically are, right?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
how our tax laws are. So we
Yeah.
need to start asking ourselves some real questions with regards, if somebody, for example, is out of the country and is working out of the country, is out of the country, living out of the country, but working in Nigeria, it's a stretch of it. Where does he pay his tax? So we need to begin to think ahead as a country of how to manage this because it's blowing up in our faces. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
not careful, we begin to lose revenue, even
Yeah.
though goods and services are being supplied and being delivered locally. So as a
Yeah.
country, we really need to begin to think of that, and begin to think of, offshore taxing,
Yeah.
where people live, how do you
Yeah.
manage your healthcare system? There are so
Yeah.
many other parts that we need to think of, and that's just at the country level as well. Now,
Yeah.
as a policy within an organization, it's also important that you create some structure around it, right?
Right.
So I'll just use us as an example. So in Walter Smith, we have what we call our core hours, right? Our core
Okay.
hours. We have a flexi work policy. Flexi work policy basically states that you can work 2 days out of a week, out of your 5 days in the week from home,
Mm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
even we also have flexibility with regards to when you resume the office and when you leave.
Yeah.
Because again, in Lagos, some people live very far and they
Mm-hmm.
are able to come to the office earlier, but need to leave early as well so that they can get
Yeah.
home,
Exactly. To beat the
before
traffic.
yes, before traffic hits. And actually also before night and insecurity begins to set in.
Insecurity. Yeah.
So but in terms of when you resume and when you leave work, we have what we call our core hours. What that
Okay.
means, everybody needs to be seated and be in the office by 10 o'clock, and
Mm-hmm.
from 10 to 3 are what we call our core hours. The reason for that is there's an expectation that team meetings and engagement events would hold within that time,
Within that. Yeah.
because you don't want to start holding team meetings and engagement events at a time where people are still in their commute, because you have
Mm-hmm.
given them the flexibility of time and
Yeah.
So that's another example of a structure.
Yeah.
Now also another structural piece we're putting is that you just don't decide as a staff, so okay, this is what I'm going to do. It needs to be approved by your supervisor and your manager as well,
Yeah.
because what happens is that the manager has an overview of how the team is going to work, so
Mm-hmm.
and they also know the personalities within the team as well. The
Yeah.
truth is there are some people that do not have the discipline to get up in the morning, sit before a computer, get their work done if they're at home, and do what needs to be done.
True.
So we have empowered the supervisors and the managers to determine if
Okay.
this staff can work from home and what times you think the staff can work from home. And by
Okay.
extension, to also revoke that approval
You have
if you
approval.
feel
Okay.
that the staff, is not making the best use, of the opportunity. And the
Yeah.
reason simply for that is, for me, these days in a VUCA world, flexibility is the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
For me,
Right.
it's not an HR thing. It's not HR pushing this. It's
Okay.
us as leaders saying, in this company, this is what we need.
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect HR to always intervene if you are struggling with your staff.
Yeah.
Just make up your mind as a supervisor, as a manager, and say, you know what, you in particular, I'm not comfortable with the outputs I'm getting from you. So I will need you
Okay.
to, I think you need some more maturity. I need you to be in the office a bit more. And what
All
that
right.
has helped us to push accountability down, you know,
Down.
down into the line and into the individuals, and everybody's taking personal responsibility and accountability for their deliverables.
I hear you say we need a behavioral change to see this like permeate into every, should I say, aspect of life, because our behavior is very important here. Like you said, psychologically in our psyche as Nigerians, I mean, we're ready, as in ready to jump. The atmosphere is already tensed, and all that. But now the structure, but it goes back to that point of behavior, because you can imagine I sit with my supervisor to determine my work hours. Okay, he looks at me from antecedent, like, we know you to be this, we know you to be this, we know to be that. From working with you over this period, my supervisor can determine, okay, behaviorally, I trust you more or less. I can trust you more with this. So that is what I hear from what you're saying. Like, we need to come to that point where trust will not be an issue. You trust your workforce, you trust your employees, as the case may be. Like, we know that they can get this done. But for us to get to that level of trust, it's like we need to work on our behavior. That is what I hear you say. Correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So that behavioral change is absolutely important. So you see, human beings are creatures of habit, right?
Yeah,
If
true.
for the last 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, you have
Hmm.
woken up every morning,
At a
driven to a
particular time.
particular place, worked and come back. All of a sudden, we are telling you, you can sleep a little bit more and save your logistics,
Yeah,
your commute time or logistics time. And
yeah,
but still, you would find that the person needs to kind of mentally adjust, So it's a
yeah,
behavioral thing. I like the other thing you said, which is very true. It's also a thing of trust. You
yeah.
know, there's a concept I have come to understand in HR, which is basically, um, to put it simply, um, trusting trusting your staff, or your employees as responsible human beings,
Mm,
responsible and mature human beings.
true.
Those days where HR was the policeman, and those days are long gone, right?
Far,
So
far
there
gone.
needs to be what did you say?
Far, far gone.
So gone. If you just stress yourself as a HR leader, if you think you want to, regulate and chase up and and define every single thing. No, people in the workplace are adults.
Mm-hmm.
So treat them as adults. You need to trust that they will do what they are supposed to do when they are supposed to do it, whether you're physically seeing them or not.
Or not.
However, we also do not have a problem withdrawing, any sort of privileges from you. It's part of the management of the system. If we
Yeah,
find out for some reason you are not just living up to that trust and living up to that expectation and accountability we expect from you. So indeed, yes, it's about changing behaviors, changing the way we think about work,
Yeah.
and also trusting people as adults and responsible human beings in the workplace.
Amazing, guys. Oh, we've been talking about remote working in Nigeria. I mean, we're blessed to have Tara Hibi here with us, a HR professional, giving us that, should I say, angle we thought we knew, but somehow we didn't. And you will agree with me, it has been an amazing time. Tara, I know you're very busy, taking this
Thank
time to do this with us. We want to say a very big
you.
thank you, but before we let you go, what's your, I wouldn't say look into the crystal ball now, but what's your projection? What do you see, say, in the next 5 years for the HR practice in Nigeria with respect to what we are talking about? What's your projection?
Okay, the key word for me is hybrid, and forgive me if I look very excited because it's actually quite exciting to me, and it's a piece of work I'm also looking at and working on. It's about hybrid working.
Yeah.
So, and I mean hybrid in every sense of the word, not
Okay.
just about flexibly going into the office and coming out, but a
Mm-hmm.
workforce that is a mix of people who show up at work and people
Mm-hmm.
who completely work 100% off site,
Okay.
you know,
Offsite.
and
Yeah.
also people who are proper part-time workers, you
Mm-hmm.
know, people who are like taking advantage, or a HR organization or an organization takes advantage of the gig economy,
The gig economy.
leveraging skills when you want them, letting them go when you don't want them. You see, I find all that is going on really exciting. The world has blown open. So
Mm-hmm.
people in Nigeria can be doing work in Australia, people in Canada can be doing work in Nigeria, and it's
Mm-hmm.
high time organizations begin to design their work life around these realities. Can you imagine? So in my mind's eye, I see an organization that has individuals that they don't show up in the office. That's the
Mm-hmm.
way their contract is, because you don't
Yeah.
require them to sit at a desk before you and do what they need to do. We
Exactly.
have people also that show up twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
because you have looked at the job scope and realized that within those 2 days, 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
they can do what I mean by show up, as in that's all they work. That's all they work in that time. So you
Yeah.
can have individuals deciding that, you know what, I'm working for company A 2 days, I work for company B 2 days. I take
Yeah.
1 day off for myself and live life, the way I want to live it. Then you still have the core team that comes into the office, and they come to the office 3 times a week, 2 times a week,
Yeah.
whatever, however you decided. Then
Yeah.
you can also have those who do night shifts. I just find that the landscape is really wide for us to do different things, and we can indeed save a lot of money. Simple thing, you have one office building. Sometimes I get concerned when I see organizations scrambling for bigger and bigger offices. You have one
Exactly.
building. Most offices today run power 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, 12 of those hours, nobody's at work, really.
Yep.
So, are there individuals that would rather come at 7 in the evening and go
Mm-hmm.
back home at 7 in the evening? I'm sure they
Mm-hmm.
are, because we
Mm-hmm.
have seen in other parts of the world people work at night. What does that do
Yeah.
for you? You can reduce your footprint as an organization, because
Yeah.
you really don't need them to be doing work in the day. Maybe the kind of
Mm-hmm.
work they do does not
Yeah.
necessarily need, that human interaction. Maybe they are
Yeah.
running some sort of reports, or they are running some scripts, or in the oil and gas industry, they could even just be running some logs. They don't
Yeah.
really need.
Simulations. Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, when I look into the crystal ball, as you put it, that's what gets me excited.
Yeah. That's what gets you excited.
Yes, that's what gets me excited. An organization that is taking maximum use of this
Mm.
new wave of the way people feel and the way people think and the kind of decisions they want to make. People doing
Beautiful.
different things, different times, keeping your overheads low, keeping your costs tight, or keeping
Mhm.
your staff engaged. Honestly, that really
Beautiful.
excites me when I think about it.
Beautiful. I hope the policymakers and the leaders, I mean, will embrace this like you are, because I am also excited about it, because somehow we are seeing a situation where there is, in my point of view, or from my point of view, enough for everybody. you know you just have this situation where you have, okay, this person can do this, so we can use this person from so time to so time, and he or she goes on to do another thing. So, oh,
Yeah,
this person can do this and all that, so somehow we just harness our, would I say,
collective differences for perfect.
collective differences, exactly,
Yeah,
for the perfect scenario. So you don't look
exactly,
down on anybody, but rather
exactly,
everybody fits in this collectivity.
exactly, exactly,
Amazing.
exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly. And it provides so much more opportunities for individuals. Individuals
Exactly.
can take different kinds of decisions about the kind of
Hmm.
life they want to live, where they
Yeah.
want to live,
To
how
leave.
they just want to, express their talents or their gifts in whatever they're doing. I really believe that it would be so much more enriching
Hmm.
for the individuals in the organization and actually quite powerful for the organization as an employee value proposition as well.
Beautiful. The Japanese, the Japanese will say, "Good thinking, good product." So we need to our style
Once
of
you can
thinking.
translate it,
Exactly.
yeah,
Tari, thank you so much. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. It's endless. But I know when we call on you again, to come on for us to
for sure.
discuss more on, I mean, topical issues like this, you would oblige us that time. We want to
Sure,
say a
sure.
very, very, very big
I
thank you.
will.
Very big
Thank
thank you,
you. Thank
guys.
you, Amakri.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your patience on chasing me this long to get this done. And thank you for
Mm.
having me on here. I've really had a good time today. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is mine. Pleasure is mine, guys. We've been discussing with Aria. I mean, Ahibi. She said so much. I think it's just for us to go back, listen, watch it again, listen, watch it again, and draw from, I mean, our discussion, because whether we like it or not, like she said, change is here, and the best you can do is to embrace that change, or rather, as we say it, be the change. You know. Well, you know how we say it on the show. We always come here to lean on one another. To do what? Glean from our experiences to forge a path. Till I come your way again. My name is Amakri. Amakri Isowe. Bye for now. Sorry?
Bye.
Thank you.